The subcommittee will come to order. Please close the doors if you can. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. This subcommittee is convening this hearing regarding inhumane treatment of children and families at the border. I will now recognize myself for 5 minutes to give an opening statement. I want to welcome... Oh, okay, well, we're going to start with the video, if you would run that. How are we doing on the opening video? Okay, let me know when that comes up. I want to welcome the members of the Subcommittee on Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. I want to welcome our distinguished witnesses and guests to this hearing on the humanitarian crisis at the border. The American people are up in arms about reports both from the Inspector General of the Department of Homeland Security and the media and various human rights groups about the dangerous overcrowding, spreading infections, influenza, diarrhea, and lice, pervasive medical inattention, sexual assaults, and systematic abuse of the rights of migrants in U.S. government care and custody at the border. We hope to shine a bright light this afternoon on these dark developments to enable rapid and effective legislative responses. I especially want to thank our first witness, Yasmin Juarez, for coming to share the painful story of her 19-month-old daughter, Marie, who experienced untreated respiratory complications during her detention by ICE and died shortly thereafter. We know that 6 children have lost their lives while in detention at the border. I want to thank all members of Congress and this committee who have traveled to the border to investigate, and all of those who are prepared to do so in the coming weeks. The human rights violations and family catastrophes happening at the border are not improving a serious regional refugee crisis, but they are worsening and exacerbating it. What is driving this refugee crisis? Gang violence and intimidation, government dysfunction, and police corruption, political persecution, rape, and gender violence, they are all driving unprecedented numbers of desperate families and terrified children out of the northern triangle of Central America to the United States. Many of the migrants amassing at our border are escaping threats of imminent death or bodily harm, or the prospect of their children being forced into violent gangs or criminal networks of sexual abuse and trafficking. Some are climate change refugees fleeing the devastating effects of extreme drought and flooding in their home areas. The journey to the border today for these huddled masses is traumatic and filled with deadly peril. Along the way, many are robbed, assaulted, or raped. Some have been killed. Parents have drowned alongside their children in the Rio Grande. But hundreds of thousands have made it to our border. They turn themselves into border officials and make their legal claim for asylum, a claim that they have the right to make under both American and international law. Yet they've been greeted not as refugees whose asylum claims must be heard and taken seriously under our due process of law, but as presumptive criminals and threats to the American people. The Trump administration has prosecuted them, subjected their families to prolonged and miserable detention, separated children from their parents, and forced migrants back into Mexico. The entire thrust of this policy is punishment, both court-ordered and government-administered, and deterrence by means of mass trauma. While the Trump administration did not cause the refugee crisis in Central America, it has exacerbated it by cutting off hundreds of millions of dollars in foreign aid for education, healthcare, and community development to precisely the countries which the refugees are now desperately fleeing in huge numbers. We owe the region at least this aid, given that we are a key market for the drug trade that has wreaked so much violence and insecurity in these countries. And all of us are implicated in foreign policies toward Central America over the last several decades, which have emphasized war and military assistance over economic and social development. The administration's chaotic policy responses have produced a severe humanitarian crisis at the border, with dangerous overcrowding, widespread sickness and disease, and a shocking failure to provide adequate medical care, food, water, and sanitation. America is watching scenes of sick children packed into holding cells, pregnant women sleeping on cold floors, and mothers trying to warm newborn babies with aluminum blankets. The policy of separating thousands of migrant children from their parents is designed to make conditions at the border so miserable that the refugees will simply stop coming. Last May, then Attorney General Sessions stated, if you don't want your child to be separated, then don't bring them across the border illegally. But these policies are failing to deter asylum-seeking families because the underlying causes of their migration are so grave and overwhelming. In fact, the Trump deterrence policy seems to be having no deterrent effect at all. According to Customs and Border Protection's own data, family migration spiked in the month after the administration announced the family separation policy, and there have been sharp increases ever since, unlike anything we've seen before in our lifetimes. Whatever else these harsh policies are intended to accomplish, the message received by hundreds of thousands of people seems to be, migrate now before things get even worse. The administration has failed to respond in a way that meets the actual humanitarian challenges at the border. Our government should be sending doctors and social workers and humanitarian supplies to the border, along with asylum officers and legal resources to help identify and process claims. We should be making sure that all of the money being spent at the border is not being wasted, but used to meet the urgent nutritional and medical needs of the migrants. Last week, the Department of Homeland Security's Inspector General warned of a ticking time bomb at Border Patrol detention facilities. The IG cited children crammed into cages with no access to showers or hot meals and serious overcrowding and prolonged detention for adults, some in standing room only conditions with no room to lie or even sit down. At the Border Patrol station in Clint, Texas, the New York Times reported outbreaks of scabies, shingles, and chicken pox were spreading among the hundreds of children in cramped cells, agents said. The stench of the children's dirty clothing was so strong it spread to the agents' own clothing. People in town would scrunch their noses when they left work. The children cried constantly. One girl seemed likely enough to try to kill herself that the agents made her sleep on a cot in front of them so they could watch her as they were processing new arrivals. There is no excuse for our government being so unprepared and indifferent to refugee flows that have been steadily mounting for months. These conditions violate American law and international human rights standards. We would not accept these conditions for refugees anywhere else in the world. The Trump administration reversed a policy, for example, that largely protected pregnant women from detention. Over 200 human rights and civil rights groups have called for the policy's reinstatement, noting the current arbitrary detention of pregnant women violates international human rights norms. Last week, the DHS Inspector General reported that 31% of children across 5 facilities had been held longer than 72 hours in violation of Flores, the 1997 settlement agreement that required children to be placed in safe and sanitary conditions and directs children to be transferred out of detention facilities as expeditiously as possible. There have now been news reports of migrant children detained for much longer than 72 hours and many for weeks. There is a dangerous lack of accountability at detention facilities. We know that many officers are doing their best under these trying and excruciating conditions. But after recent reports, there is little doubt that there is a real contingent of border agents acting in callous and scandalous ways, punishing scared and helpless children, mocking migrant deaths on Facebook, and even attacking in vile ways members of Congress who dare to demand fair treatment for migrants under the rule of law. I'm pleased that the acting secretary has pledged to investigate these reports, but reportedly top Border Patrol officials have been aware of the Facebook group and its egregious contents for many months and even years. What sort of culture exists within DHS that would foster or even tolerate this behavior for so long? Why did the administration and its allies block efforts to ensure that increased funding for the border be accompanied by provisions to ensure responsible oversight over how our money as taxpayers is being spent? How can we end official tolerance for these shameful actions in our name? I hope our hearing today will bring these difficult facts into the light and pose hard questions about official actions that shame us as a society, not as Democrats or Republicans or independents, but as Americans. I also hope that this hearing, in conjunction with Chairman Cummings' full committee hearing scheduled for Friday, will identify immediate steps to provide relief and change in these conditions. I'll now go to the opening video before I turn it over to our ranking member, Mr. Roy.
Report reveals just how grim conditions are inside border detention facilities in South Texas. New photos show severe overcrowding.
The incoming president of the American Academy of Pediatrics toured 2 CBP facilities last week and tells CBS News they are no place for children.
When they opened the door, the first thing that hit us was a smell, and it was a smell of sweat, urine, and feces.
Investigators also say they observed overcrowding at facilities where children are being held, and that many are being held longer than legally allowed. At 3 facilities they visited, investigators say children had no access to showers, and at 2 facilities, no access to hot meals.
The children are hardly being fed anything nutritious, and they are being medically neglected. We're seeing a flu outbreak, and we're also seeing a lice infestation. It is, we have children sleeping on the floor. It's the worst conditions I've ever witnessed in several years of doing these inspections.
Sobre cómo estuvo el centro de detención.
No le daban poca comida, unos niños que no se bañaban, no los bañaban, los trataban mal, allí donde estábamos, unos niños enfermos, que allí les decía que lo llevaran al hospital, pero no lo llevaban.
Well, CBS News has confirmed that a sixth migrant child has died after crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. Previously, officials had confirmed the deaths of 5 migrant children since December. But an official at the Department of Health and Human Services told CBS News late Wednesday that an unaccompanied 10-year-old girl from El Salvador died in U.S. custody in September.
So visually, I had people there that told me the job that they are doing is incredible.
The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Roy of Texas, for 5 minutes for his opening statement, and I will be liberal with that.
I thank the chairman. Ms. Juarez, on behalf of this committee, all the members here, the entire House of Representatives, there are no words that we can possibly share with you about the loss of your little girl. I'm the father of a son and a daughter. I cannot possibly imagine what you have gone through, and we owe it to you and to our country and to all those who seek to come here to have a system that works and to not have something like this happen. And so my prayers from my family to you, and we thank you for being here. Mr. Chairman, I have to say, I am frustrated, though, with the title of the hearing. It's setting a tone that doesn't allow us to come together to address this difficult problem in a way that is befitting of the United States and our welcoming nature as a country. It is a hearing entitled Kids in Cages. What we say and the hyperbole we use matters. As a member from Texas and a former staffer on the Senate Judiciary Committee, as a member of Congress, I've been to the border many times, and to this day I have never seen a kid in a cage the way those words seem to indicate it. Let's look at the advertisements for this hearing, okay? The slide on the right is the ad for this hearing, showing pictures of kids supposedly in cages. The picture on the left is the picture from 2014, when President Obama's DHS Secretary Jay Johnson was giving a tour of a facility where you've got, yes, chain link barriers put up in temporary facilities at that time under the Obama administration in a way to deal with a crisis at 2014 time of unaccompanied children riding on the top of train cars. We remember those horrific stories from 5 years ago, and trying to deal with the problem of massive numbers of people coming across the border, oftentimes with parents that aren't the parents claiming to be the parents of the child, which is horrific. Oftentimes in facilities and dealing with situations where you want to separate the children from bad actors. We have, in the most recent time, we've had 144,000 people that CPP had to deal with in May. How do you deal with that? Under the most generous circumstances of trying to figure out what to do to care for these children, release them to family members, release them in a safe way, care for them, give them food, give them health care. How would we have them do it when we're denying them the facilities and the resources to do it? We should discuss the humanitarian crisis. We're experiencing an unprecedented surge in migrants. You see the chart over here. I don't have to go through it. The red line, you see the massive spike in apprehensions. The numbers in June were 94,987, the highest June number recorded in at least the last 5 years. It was down from 144,000 in May. That often happens because of the heat in June. I've personally seen that an overwhelming number of individuals fill our Border Patrol stations and stretch our Border Patrol workers to go above and beyond. We all agree that they're stretched. There is no disagreement in this room on that, at least today. There might have been 5 months ago. I've seen the facilities and I've not seen a single cage in the way that it is being depicted. I'm seeing ways to try to separate people and keep them safe. And we demean the process and our Border Patrol agents, who are law enforcement officers for the government of the United States, trying to do their job, when we call them cages. It is not helpful to use this crisis that so many denied and called manufactured now to score political points. In this fiscal year, more than 694,000 aliens have been apprehended, whether they were claiming asylum or whether they were just straight coming illegally. On February 15th, the President declared a national emergency at the border to deal with the escalating crisis. On May 1st, the Office of Management and Budget wrote Congress its first request for emergency funding to address this worsening crisis. That request and the follow-up was ignored. And the situation grew so dire, I found myself in agreement with the editorial board of the New York Times, who said, it is time for Congress to stop dithering and pass emergency funding to deal with this nightmare. I even forced a few votes on the floor of the House of Representatives. How dare I force votes in the People's House? And some of my colleagues joined. Why? Because for 5 months, we had listened to some of our colleagues say there is no crisis. Speaker Pelosi called the situation a fake crisis at the border. Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Engel called the situation a fake crisis at the border. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler, there is no crisis at the border. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, one of my colleagues on this committee, we don't have a border crisis. Representative Doggett, a fellow Texan, called the situation a phony border crisis. Representative Sanford Bishop called it a crisis that does not exist. I could go on and on. There are dozens of examples, hundreds of examples. Instead of focusing on the magnets that will allow cartels to exploit women and children, some in this body would rather attack the men and women on the front lines of the crisis. In the face of our willful blindness and at times blatant falsehood, CBP has performed over 3,000 rescues this year. 3,000 rescues this year, including last month in Laredo, where they rescued 14 migrants locked in a horse trailer that was 124 degrees inside with no ventilation or exit. Now, we can have a robust debate about how we solve this crisis, about what we do about legal and illegal, about what we do about asylum, about ports of entry, between ports of entry. These are all complex questions, and I wish we would all sit in a room, roll our sleeves up, and sit down and figure out how to solve the problem. But the reality is CBP is out there saving lives. Agencies such as the CBP do not have enough resources to respond to the crisis while also performing their law enforcement duties. DHS Secretary McClellan said this weekend, quote, "We have no evidence that children went hungry." Now, we're oversight. We should go dig into that statement. I agree with that. Let's go make sure that there aren't children going hungry. Of course we're worried about it. This is now his words. Of course we're worried about it. Everyone in the entire chain of command was worried about the situation for children. That's why we've built soft-sided facilities, 1,000 spaces. We're building more that we're going to be opening next week. We're trying to provide as much space and as much nice a setting as we possibly can while children are in our custody. But the big point was to move them to HHS. Let me give you an update. On June 1st, we had 2,500 children in our custody. 1,200 had been with us over 3 days. Now that we have the supplemental from Congress, the supplemental that was being denied, we have the supplemental from Congress. HHS has additional beds, and we only have 350 as of yesterday afternoon's report, and only 20 of those children have been with us for more than 3 days. So that's a huge improvement, and that's his words. Today, I talked to a CBP official that said at no point in time has the CBP facility been lacking in supplies for migrant children. Okay, that's his word. We should look into that and make sure that's the case. When my friends across the aisle ignored the administration's request for emergency funding for 2 months, DHS took action and CBP began paying for supplies out of their operational budget. Sometimes they paid out of their own pockets to make sure that things were taken care of. Importantly, my chief of staff went to Clint this weekend because I felt so strongly about looking into what some of my colleagues were claiming. I couldn't go because of a family conflict, but my chief of staff went. And he looked and he talked and he saw and he took pictures. He observed some of the pictures you're going to see here, which is from a video from a Border Patrol head in, I believe, in Arizona. Facilities where you're seeing lots of materials and supplies and food. And there's other pictures that show other materials and supplies and food. Now, can I guarantee that all of that got to every person who's been detained? No. But this is what we're getting in terms of information and what we're seeing, what I see with my own eyes. I've seen with my own eyes the facilities in McAllen where I talk to Border Patrol and they'll see some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle come in and go, well, this all looks great. They walk across the street and they go get in front of a camera and they say kids in cages. That's not going to solve the problem. That's not going to help Ms. Juarez. That's not going to help stop the cartels who made $2 billion in 2018 profiting by moving people through Mexico to come here. Hundreds of millions of dollars, the Reynosa faction of the Gulf Cartel, the Cartel del Noreste of Los Zetas, the Sinaloas, dangerous cartels making tons of money moving people through. And even if you believe this is because the Northern Triangle is suffering in calamitous situations economically in terms of safety and security and gangs, agreed. But what we're talking about is a profit model that cartels are abusing to use for profit to come then and use our asylum laws to harm these people and to harm that father and that child that died in the river trying to come here. Now, I've gone longer than I probably should have, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that you've given me the time. We have a broken immigration system, must act quickly. I believe we need to fix the asylum problem, the Flores settlement agreement. We need to have a strong collective agreement on what we can do to secure the border. I've recently introduced a bill aimed at addressing the crisis, the Charitable Donations Freedom Act, to make sure there's no barriers in the Anti-Deficiencies Act. If anybody wants to give something, they can give charitable gifts. I don't even know if it's necessary, but let's make sure there's no barriers, and let's work together to bring down any barriers to make sure people are cared for. I don't believe that the CBP isn't doing everything it can to ensure that human beings are treated the way they should. I look forward to hearing from the witnesses, and I appreciate the Chairman's time.
Mr. Roy, thank you very much. Now, we have two panels today. The first panel has just one witness, and that's Yasmin Juarez, who's come, and so I am going to swear her in. We are very grateful to you for your appearance today. We extend you our condolences, our sympathy, and also our gratitude, because you're doing a great service to America by coming forward to tell your story. You are accompanied today by Jasmine Rumbeau, a certified interpreter with the New York State Unified Court System. You have a headset, and you can do simultaneous translation for Ms. Juarez when the members speak or ask questions. I believe we're expecting votes to be called in about half an hour, I think the last I heard. So we will let the witness testify. We will have whatever questions there are, and when we return, we'll open up with the second panel. So I'd like to swear you in, so please stand if you would, Ms. Juarez, and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that the witness answered in the affirmative. Thank you, Ms. Juarez. Please be seated. Please be sure to speak directly into the microphone. Without objection, your written statement will be made part of the record. I also, without objection, will waive onto the committee for the purposes of participation today Ms. Tlaib from Michigan and Mr. Grothman from Wisconsin. Hearing no objection, they are waived on. And with that, Ms. Juarez, you are now recognized to speak to the committee.
Primeramente les agradezco a todos ustedes, a cada uno por nombre. Que el Señor Jesús me los bendiga. Gracias, presidente Raskin y el miembro de rango Roy, miembros del comité, por invitarme a estar acá. Me llamo Yasmin Juárez. Mi hija Marie y yo huimos de Guatemala buscando asilo en los Estados Unidos. Hicimos este viaje porque temíamos por nuestras vidas. El viaje fue peligroso, pero tenía más miedo a lo que nos podría pasar si nos quedábamos en mi país. Entonces vinimos a Estados Unidos, donde yo esperaba construir una vida mejor y más segura para mi hija Marie. Lastimosamente, vi morir a mi niña, lenta y muy dolorosamente, unos meses antes de su segundo cumpleaños. Ella dejó de existir.
First of all, I'd like to thank each and every one of you, and may Jesus bless each and every one of you. Thank you, Chairman Raskin, Ranking Member Roy, and members of the committee for inviting me. My name is Yasmin Juarez. My daughter, Marie, and I fled Guatemala seeking asylum in the United States. We made this journey because we feared for our lives. The trip was dangerous, but I was more afraid of what might happen to us if we stayed. So we came to the United States, where I hope to build a better, safer life for us. Unfortunately, that did not happen. Instead, I watched my baby girl die slowly and painfully just a few months before her second birthday.
Me duele revivir esta experiencia y recordar lo que yo sufrí. Pero estoy aquí porque el mundo debe saber lo que está sucediendo con tantos niños en las cárceles dentro de la detención de ICE. Mi hermosa niña se ha ido ahora, pero espero que su historia estimule al gobierno de los Estados Unidos a actuar para que niños no mueran por negligencia y maltrato que dan.
It is painful for me to relive this experience and remember that suffering. But I am here because the world should know what is happening to so many children inside of ICE detention. My beautiful girl is gone, but I hope her story will spur this country's government to act so that more children do not die because of neglect and mistreatment.
Marie siempre había sido una niña súper feliz y muy saludable. El viaje desde Guatemala lo hizo sin ningún problema. Nos retuvieron bajo la custodia de CBP durante 3 o 4 días en un lugar conocido como La Hielera, porque ahí hace mucho frío. Nos encerraron en una jaula con más de 30 personas, mamás y niños, y nos obligaron a dormir en un piso de concreto.
Maria had always been a super happy, very healthy baby. She made the journey from Guatemala without any problems. We were held in CBP custody for 3 or 4 days in a facility known as La Hielera, or the ice box, because it's freezing cold. We were locked in a cage with about 30 other people, moms and children, and forced to sleep on a concrete floor.
Nos enviaron al centro de detención ICE en Daly, Texas. Una enfermera examinó a Marie cuando llegamos y la encontró sana. Nos metieron en una habitación con otras 5 personas, madres e hijos. En total éramos como 12. Noté obviamente cuando yo entré al centro de detención a muchos niños enfermos. Y que no hacían ningún esfuerzo en poder atenderlos, en poder separar a los niños de los sanos y de los enfermos. En nuestra habitación noté inmediatamente que había un niño enfermo y eso como madre a mí me dolió. Su madre trató de llevarlo a la clínica, pero no los atendieron.
We were sent to the ICE detention center in Dilley, Texas. A nurse examined Marie when we arrived and found her healthy. We were packed into a room with 5 other people, mothers with children, a total of 12 people in our room. I noticed immediately how many sick children there were in detention, that no effort was being made to separate the sick from the healthy or to care for them. One of the little boys in our room was sick. As a mother, this was very hurtful to see. His mom tried to take him to the clinic, but they kept sending him back without being seen, without care.
Al cabo de una semana, en Daly, Mario se enfermó, mi niña. Primero era toser y estornudar, mucha secreción en su nariz. La llevé a la clínica, donde esperé con muchas personas, muchísimas personas, en un gimnasio donde nos mantenían horas y horas esperando para poder ser atendidas. Un asistente médico examinó a Marie días después y me dijo que tenía una infección respiratoria, en el cual le recetó Tylenol, que es miel para la tos.
Within a week of being at Dilley, Marie got sick, my little girl. First, it was coughing and sneezing and a lot of nasal secretions. I brought her to the clinic where I waited in line with many other people in a gymnasium to get medical care. When the physician's assistant saw her days after, she said that Marie had a respiratory infection and prescribed Tylenol and honey for her cough.
Pero al día siguiente, María empeoró. Tenía fiebre a más de 104 grados y comenzó a tener diarrea, vómitos, no comía. Y recuerdo que su cabeza, su cuerpecito estaba sumamente caliente, estaba débil. Al otro día me dijo que tenía una infección en el oído y le dio antibióticos. Le supliqué que le realizaran un examen más profundo, pero nos enviaron de regreso a nuestra habitación.
The next day, however, Maria was worse. She was running a fever of over 140 degrees and began having diarrhea and vomiting as well. She wouldn't eat, and I remember her head and her little body felt so hot and that she was weak. On this day, they told me that she had an ear infection and gave her antibiotics. I begged them to do deeper exams, but they sent us back to our room.
Intenté volver varias veces a la clínica. Esperaba en la fila desde temprano, junto a docenas de madres y niños enfermos. 2 veces me rechazaron y me dijeron que me devolviera a mi cuarto.
I tried to come back multiple times to the clinic. I'd wait in lines from early in the morning with dozens of other mothers with their sick children. Twice I was told away and told to go back to my room.
María había perdido casi el 8% de su peso corporal en solo 10 días. Todavía vomitaba constantemente. Finalmente la vio un médico y este médico me dijo que le diera Pedialyte y Vicks Vaporub, en el cual luego después de su muerte yo hacía investigaciones en internet que el Vicks Vaporub no debe darse a un niño menor de 12 años porque causa daños respiratorios.
Mariette lost almost 8% of her body weight in just 10 days. She was still vomiting constantly. When she was finally seen by a doctor, they told me to give her Pedialyte and Vicks VapoRub. I didn't learn until after she died, when I was researching it online, that you aren't supposed to give Vicks to kids under 2 years old because it could cause respiratory problems.
Mi bebé se enfermó más y más días, todos los días. Vomitaba constantemente, tenía mucha fiebre y no comía ni dormía. Su cuerpo estaba sumamente desgastado, débil. Finalmente recibí una noticia dentro de las instalaciones de J-Live en la cual a mí me dijeron que ya podía irme con mis familiares, en la cual yo me sentía alivianada porque mis pensamientos eran llevar a Marie a un pediatra para que la pudieran revisar y qué tan grave estaba, porque a mí como mamá me importaba muchísimo y la veía sufrir como no tienen idea, y eso como madre a mí me dolía muchísimo.
My baby got sicker. She was vomiting constantly. Her fever kept going up. She wouldn't eat or sleep. Her body was weak. And when I finally received a notice that Maria had an appointment to be seen by a doctor, I was so relieved, though that didn't happen. We were told that we were going to be processed for a transfer out of detention. And at that point, I was relieved because I thought that I would actually be able to take her to see a doctor. As a mother, it was very important for me to do that. It was very difficult for me to see her suffering.
A las 5 de la mañana del día 25 de marzo, nos despertaron para ser procesados, para transferirnos fuera de las instalaciones del centro de detención. Nos dejaron por allí por horas y no pude ir a la clínica. Cuando dejamos Daily, María fue vista por un médico personal. Más tarde descubrí que sus registros médicos decían que no tenía restricciones médicas y que estaba autorizada para poder hacer el viaje, cuando no fue así. Ella jamás, antes de salir de Daily, jamás fue revisada por un médico, cuando en la historial médico decía eso, pero yo como madre nunca pasó que ella vio al médico.
What happened was that at 5 a.m. we were awoken and taken to be processed for transfer out of detention, and there we waited for hours. She was not taken to the clinic to be seen by medical staff. I later found out that her medical records said that she had been cleared
Semanas la trasladaron a otro hospital de niños. Mi niña sufría un dolor, fue pinchada y finalmente necesitó un ventilador para poder ayudarla a respirar. Ni siquiera podía sostenerla, abrazarla, consolarla cuando pedía por su madre. Fue un dolor terrible poder ver a mi hija en esas situaciones, en esas circunstancias. Yo hubiese querido como madre poder estar ahí en su lugar y no ella.
I was terrified by the time our plane landed. We took Maria to a pediatrician as soon as we could, and just a few hours later, to the emergency room. She was admitted to the intensive care unit with a viral lung infection. Over the next 6 weeks, she was transferred to another children's hospital. My little girl suffered horrible pain. She was poked and prodded and eventually needed a ventilator to help her breathe. I couldn't even hold her or hug her or console her when she asked for her mother. It was a terrible pain to see my child in a situation and circumstance like this one, and as a mother, I wish that I could have taken her place.
Todo el arduo trabajo de los médicos llegó demasiado tarde. Mi María murió el Día de las Madres, que es en la ciudad de mi país, se celebra el Día de las Madres. Cuando yo salí del hospital ese día, todo lo que tenía conmigo era un pedazo de papel en la cual los médicos se encargaron de hacer las manitas de mi niña. Eso era lo único que a mí me quedó, solo sus manitas. Las enfermeras lo hicieron el día anterior como regalo del Día de las Madres.
All of the hard work of these doctors came too late. My Maria died on what is Mother's Day in my country. When I walked out of the hospital that day, all I had with me was a piece of paper with Maria's handprints in pink paint that the staff had created for me. It was the only thing that I had left, and the nurses had given it to me as a Mother's Day gift.
Hay días en los que solo quiero rendirme, porque para mí ha sido muy, muy doloroso tener que ver a muchos niños y que no sea mi niña. Y en pensar en no volverla a ver nunca más, en poder abrazarla, en poder disfrutarla, en poder decirle que la amaba muchísimo. Eso para mí ha sido muy duro. No tienen la mayor idea de cómo a mí me ha costado salir adelante sin tener que llevar a mi niña conmigo. Me quitaron un pedazo de mi corazón, me arrancaron el alma. Y ahora estoy sufriendo y me está costando levantarme y salir adelante. Yo quería un mejor futuro para ella, trabajar por ella, salir adelante, verla crecer como lo estaba haciendo. No puedo hacer ahora, no lo puedo hacer porque ella ya no está. Hoy estoy acá porque lo que quiero es que se detenga. No deberíamos dejar que mueran muchos niños. María podría estar hoy aquí, pero no lo está. El mes siguiente, María iba a cumplir sus 3 añitos de vida, en la cual es una fecha para mí muy dolorosa. Y no poderla tener acá conmigo, no puedo demostrarle todo lo que yo siento y no puedo decir todo lo que yo quisiera decirles porque no hay palabras, no hay palabras.
I'm here today because I want to put an end to this. It is very hard to see so many children and for none of them to be my daughter, and to think that I will never see her again, or hug her, or enjoy being with her, or tell her just how much I love her. It is very hard. You have no idea how hard it is to move forward without my little girl. It's like they tore out a piece of my heart, like they tore out my soul. I'm suffering every day. It is difficult to get up and move forward without her. I wanted to have a better life for her and a better future and work hard so that she could keep growing the way that she was. But now we won't be able to do that because she is gone. I'm here today to put an end to this and that we not allow any more children to suffer and die in this way. Maria could be here with us, but she is not. Next month, she would have been 3 years old. That is a very painful date for me. It's painful to not have her with me and show her what I feel and say what I want for her. I have no words to describe that.
Mi hija ahora se ha ido. Se supone que las personas que dirigen estas instalaciones, que cuidan de esos pequeños ángeles, que hoy no han hecho nada malo, la mayoría de los niños que son traídos aquí por padres que buscan una mejor vida para sus hijos, una vida segura para ellos,
My daughter is gone. The people who are in charge of running these facilities and caring for these little angels are not supposed to let these things happen to them. Their parents have brought them here to find a better life and a safer life for their children.
Hoy estoy aquí porque no quiero que otro angelito más sufra como María y como hoy en día yo estoy sufriendo. No quiero que otras madres y padres pierdan a sus hijos. No puede ser tan difícil que en este país, Estados Unidos, no puedan proteger a los niños, que los encierran muy duro. No saben el terror que un niño siente, que una madre siente, tener que ver a muchos niños encerrados en jaulas, pasando hambre, pasando frío, no tener el calor de un hogar, solo tener alrededor a cientos de personas pasando lo mismo que ellos. Es sumamente doloroso.
I'm here today because I don't want any more little angels to suffer the way Marie did and the way I am now. I don't want any more mothers or fathers to lose children. It can't be so hard for a country like the United States to protect kids who are locked up. It is very hard. You don't know the terror that mothers and children feel when they see children in cages, hungry, cold, without the warmth of a home. Just hundreds of other people in the same situation that they are in. It is very painful.
Si yo tuviera el poder de poder cambiar algo, el deseo de poder hacer las cosas bien para proteger a los niños, créanme que lo haría. Gracias a Dios me han dado un corazón tan noble y a la vez muy débil, porque me duele tener que ver a esos niños sufrir. Yo lo viví, yo lo vi y me duele muchísimo. No poder hacer algo, no poder tener la oportunidad de hacerlo. Si hoy estoy acá en día, les agradezco infinito de corazón. Que Dios bendiga a cada uno de ustedes por nombre, por darme la oportunidad de estar acá y contar mi testimonio de lo que yo sufrí, de lo que yo pasé con Marie. Y confío en Dios de que todos ustedes tengan el poder de hacer el cambio, de poder hacer la diferencia, para que estos niños no sufran, para que las madres no sufran lo que yo pasé hoy en día. Porque es terrible. No tienen idea del dolor que se siente de no tener a mi niña conmigo. Les agradezco infinitamente por darme la oportunidad a todos por poder contar mi historia. Y si puedo hacer la diferencia, la voy a hacer. Gracias.
If I had the power to change things and do it right and protect children, believe me that I would. I thank God for giving me a heart that is noble but weak. It is very painful to see what children are going to and to want to do something and not be able to. I want to thank you with all of my heart, and I want God to bless each and every one of you by name. Thank you for the opportunity to be here and to be able to offer my testimony. I trust in God that you will have the power to change things and make a difference so that children and mothers will not have to suffer. It's a terrible thing. You have no idea the pain of what the pain is that this means, to not have her here with me. So my infinite thanks to you, and if there's anything that I can do to make a difference, I will. Thank you.
Ms. Juarez, thank you for your testimony. Words cannot express the sympathy that we feel towards you. Words cannot express our sorrow at hearing your story. And words cannot express our gratitude to you for having the strength to come forward to tell about these horrific events that have taken place. If you're okay taking a few questions, I just have one or two, and then I'll turn to the ranking member to see if he has any, and if any other members of the committee have anything that they want to ask you. In fact, let me start with you, Mr. Roy. We've gone over with the witness, and I'm happy to donate the lion's share of my time to the witness's presentation. Do you have anything you'd like to ask?
Ms. Juarez, I would just reiterate the statement of the chairman and the statement that I tried to open with, that you said it, no hay palabras. There are no words, and very thankful for your faith and for your blessing upon us, and for your courage in being here, and thank you for being here.
You know, Ms. Juarez, our country is a nation of immigrants, except for the descendants of slaves and the Native Americans. All of us are here as immigrants. We're the descendants of immigrants. And our ancestors, our parents, our grandparents saw America as a land of hope and dreams and opportunity. And I know that you can't talk specifically about what you left behind in Guatemala for legal reasons, and your lawyers have advised you not to get into the detail there. But I wonder if you would talk to us about what America represented to you, what moved you to try to get to America with Maria when you came.
Claro que sí. Como bien lo decía, Estados Unidos es un país lleno de oportunidades, de trabajo, de médicos muy importantes. Como dicen en mi país, el sueño americano de todo mundo. Mi anhelo de traerme a mi hija para acá, el propósito era poderla sacar adelante, verla crecer, hacer todas las cosas que yo no pude hacer en mi país con ella acá. Acá es un país libre, vuelvo y repito, un país lleno de oportunidades. Tenía muchos sueños, muchos anhelos con mi niña, muchísimos, no se imaginan. Pero hoy sí puedo hacer la diferencia, la puedo hacer. No me va a caber la menor duda de hacerlo. Eso es lo que a mí representa Estados Unidos para mí. Un lugar de sueños, oportunidades, trabajo, libertad, ante todo.
Yes, of course. As you said, the United States is the land of opportunity, work, important doctors, and in my country, you know, they say, the American dream. So my wish and the purpose of bringing my child here was to move forward with her, to have her grow, and to be able to give her all of the things that I would not be able to give her in my country. Because this is a country of freedom and opportunities. We had so many wishes and dreams when we came here, you can't imagine. But now I will definitely make that difference that the U.S. represents. It represents that dream and opportunity and work and freedom above everything else.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Ms. Maloney from New York, and members, we're in sort of a modified 5-minute rule. Obviously, the witness has been through a lot, but if there's 1 or 2 questions you'd like to ask, I think that works out well. Ms. Maloney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ms. Juarez. This was very difficult to hear your testimony, and I know it was even more difficult to give your testimony. So why are you here in what is such an obviously painful experience for you to remember the horror of what your Marie went through? Why are you here?
Estoy aquí hoy porque quiero que todas las personas de todo el mundo, de todos los países, en especial en Estados Unidos, podamos hacer el cambio, podamos hacer la diferencia para cuidar y proteger más a los niños. En los centros de detenciones como ICE, es un lugar terrible y no es un lugar adecuado para tener a niños encerrados, como si fueran animales. Es muy duro decirlo. Creo que hoy estoy acá, vuelvo y repito, quiero hacer la diferencia, quiero ayudar a muchos niños en memoria de mi hija Marie. Quiero hacer esto posible, en que si se puede hacer el cambio con mi corazón, con todo mi corazón, yo lo haría.
I'm here today because I want to tell all people of all the world, in all countries, especially in the United States, that we need to make a change and make a difference to actually care and protect kids more. ICE detention centers are terrible, inadequate places to lock children up, I'm sorry to say, as if they were animals. It is difficult to have to say that, but I repeat that I'm here because I want to make a difference to help more children in the name and in the memory of Marie. And if it's possible to make that difference and to make that change, believe me, I want that to happen.
You described...
Ms. Maloney, forgive me, I've learned that votes are about to be called in a moment. Would you be willing to cede to some other members so everybody could ask a question? Would that be okay?
Yes.
And I'll just recognize them as I saw Ms. Tlaib, you had your hand. If you would like to ask a question, Ms. Wasserman-Schultz, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, and Ms. Presley.
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Juarez, thank you so much for being here. I wanted to ask, it's so important because you in many ways experienced something that we saw ourselves in many ways when we went to El Paso, but you referred to it as the ice box. You also talked about your daughter not getting access to care and so forth. Would you talk a little bit more about the conditions that you and your daughter were in? I think it would be really helpful for my colleagues to understand how it felt. You know, sometimes you don't think about this, but the food. When I went there, people were just like sleeping, just constantly laying down, and the children were jumping on top of the body. You know, the kids were energetic and jumping around. They were all again in the same facility. I think it's really important to talk about your experience while you were in our care.
Ya, claro. Cuando yo ingresé a las instalaciones de detención de ICE, nos pasaron al cuarto por una noche. Estaba muy frío. Pasamos toda una madrugada durmiendo en el suelo, en el piso de concreto, donde solo nos daban unas cobijas, le llaman ellos, que eran color grises, como bien lo mostraban en la foto. Ellos le llaman cobija a eso. Para mí no es eso, para mí no es eso. La comida no era la adecuada para un niño. No tiene nada de nutrientes que pueda con la salud de los niños. No tienen la higiene adecuada para un niño. Supongo que la comida pasa por muchas manos en la cual pueden tener variedades de bacterias y eso enferma a un niño, lo enferma a uno como adulto. Los niños no tienen las suficientes defensas para poder soportar una enfermedad tan grande. La experiencia que yo viví en J-Live, al principio María era una niña feliz. En mi país María era una niña saludable. Bendito sea Dios, ella no pasó por una enfermedad grave, nunca. Hasta el momento que yo llegué a Estados Unidos fue que empezó a enfermar. Alrededor habían cientos de personas, niños y adultos enfermos. Y a mí me dolía verlos, tener que ver a cientos de personas haciendo fila para tener una atención, para poder tener una consulta, para poder ver al médico. Muchas personas como yo tuvimos que devolvernos a nuestras habitaciones y no recibimos ayuda médica. Creo que eso es lo más negligente que tiene las detenciones de ICE. Deberían de poner un poco más atención y tener el control, aumentar más el control sobre la salud de los niños, que esa es la prioridad. Tendría que ser la prioridad de ellos.
Sure. When I was admitted into the ICE detention facility, we spent a very cold night, that entire early morning, sleeping on concrete with this gray thing. They said it was a blanket, but it's so-called blanket, but it's not that for me. The food was not appropriate for a child. It didn't have the proper nutrients for the health of a child, nor the proper hygienic situation. It looks like the food went through many hands, and that could be many more germs then that could make a child sick or an adult sick. And children don't really have the natural defenses to be able to ward off any kind of serious illnesses. And in my experience with Marie, she was a happy, healthy child, thank God, when we were back in our country. She didn't suffer any serious illnesses until we got here into the United States. But in the detention facility, there were hundreds of people who were sick, children and adults. And it was very difficult to see that. It was very difficult to see hundreds of people standing in line, trying to be seen for a medical consult. And what happened to me and many other people is that we had to go back and be turned away without receiving that kind of help. And that, to me, seems like the most negligent thing. And that what would be necessary is greater attention and supervision to the health of children, which should be the priority.
Thank you. For one question, Mr. Clay, and then Ms. Wasserman-Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me make a statement and then ask one question. You know, this disgraceful detention policy starts at the top. Starts with President Trump, Stephen Miller, who initiated this policy. DHS implements it. And, you know, we as Americans should be ashamed of what has transpired at these detention centers. And if you are not, you have lost your soul and compassion for others. Let me just ask one question. In your testimony, Ms. Juarez, you noted that you begged a nurse to examine Marie's lungs after she had been coughing for over 2 weeks. Did the nurse give you a reason for not examining Marie's lungs?
Nunca me dieron una explicación del por qué ellos no hacían exámenes profundos. Recuerdo una noche que yo estaba en mi habitación, ya íbamos por ir a almorzar con Marie. María estaba dormida. Yo la fui a despertar, la empecé a mover, que íbamos a ir por comida. María no reaccionaba. Y obviamente yo como mamá, mi reacción de que obviamente despierta, María, vamos a ir a comer. Y ella no despertaba. Y yo como madre sentía el miedo de que María le estuviera pasando algo. De inmediatamente la agarré y me la llevé al médico. Yo fui a rogarles a ellos que me dieran una cita porque no podían atenderlos a uno si uno no tenía una cita médica. Yo fui a rogarles que me dieran una para que vieran a María. Me hicieron esperar más de 1 hora. Me tuvieron sentada ahí. Lo único que le hicieron con ella fue tomarle la temperatura y darle un helado para que se le bajara la fiebre que tenía. Y yo decía, ¿por qué un helado le hacía más daños a los pulmones de mi niña? En mi país estamos acostumbrados a que cuando un niño se enferma, debemos de cubrirlos. Acá no. Acá le dan una paleta helada. Eso hace que los pulmones de los niños enfermen. Y yo con una duda de que si ellos eran profesionales, ¿por qué les dan una paleta helada a un niño? Y ellos me daban la explicación de que eso hacía que la fiebre se le bajaba a los niños. Y en vez de mejorarla, empeoraban. Frente a un doctor, María vomitó. No hicieron por venir y revisarle, hacerle un examen más profundo, o por lo menos, yo como madre decía, aunque así esposada me lleven, pero necesito que mi hija vea a un médico especialista, porque lo que tenía María era muy grave. Lo notaba en la tristeza de sus ojos, en la debilidad que ella tenía. Recordar todo eso es muy doloroso.
I was never given an explanation of why they didn't do more serious tests. Actually, one night we were in my room and we were going to go eat, and so I was trying to wake her up, and I shook her, "Wake up, we're going to go eat," and she didn't react. So obviously, as a mother, my reaction was to try to wake her up to go eat and to worry very much when she wouldn't wake up. And so I begged after that point. I begged that we be giving an appointment because it was not we weren't able to see a doctor without having an appointment. So we finally were seeing. What they did was take her temperature and give her ice cream. And they told me that would help with her fever. But I think that was worse for her lungs. In my country, when the child is sick, you cover them up. But not here. They gave her a popsicle, which I think made her lungs sicker, but they said it was good for her fever. It actually made me wonder about their professionalism. And actually, I took her to see a doctor, and she was vomiting in front of the doctor, and they still wouldn't do any more serious tests with her. And I was saying, whatever it takes, you can take me handcuffed if you want to, but I really wanted them to have her see a specialist because it seemed that whatever she had was something more serious. You can tell just by the sadness in their eyes, and it was a very painful thing to experience.
Okay. So we're going to go to Ms. Wasserman-Schultz. We're going to go to Mr. Roy. We're going to go to Ms. Presley and Ms. Ocasio-Cortez, and I think that will take us to the end. So, Ms. Wasserman-Schultz, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Señora Juarez, lamento la muerte de su niña. Yo soy una madre también. No me puedo imaginar tu agonía. My question is focused on the medical record that makes it appear that your daughter was actually seen by a medical professional on March 25th, 2018. First, no one warned you that your daughter may be too sick to travel. It says on the medical record that she was cleared for travel. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And just to be clear, on the date of this medical record, which is on the screen, Mary did not actually see a doctor, correct?
Yeah, correcto.
And so there was no medical evaluation of your daughter that actually happened on your last day in the facility or on which was the day that this medical record was produced?
No, para nada.
No, not at all.
So Mr. Chairman, what my concern is that if ICE medical records of migrants like Senora Juarez can be fabricated, which it appears that this one may have been, how many more fraudulent medical records might be out there? I mean, she's testifying here under oath. And we have to get to the bottom of this and ensure that the medical records that are being produced by ICE are accurate and that they're not just making them up to cover up their neglect. It's unacceptable.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wasserman-Schultz. Mr. Roy.
Ms. Juarez, una pregunta. Perdóname, mi español no es muy bueno, pero ¿todavía quieres quedarte en los Estados Unidos ahora?
Claro que sí. Después de todo lo que yo sufrí en mi país, no tengo deseos de regresar más allá. No tengo familia allá y mi sueño ahora es estar acá, poder salir adelante, hacer todo lo que yo no pude hacer en el nombre de María, estudiar, aprender, para que en el futuro, cuando yo vuelva a ser madre, enseñarle y darle a conocer a mis futuros hijos todo lo que yo luché, estudié y aprendí sobre el camino. Es muy difícil.
Of course, after everything that happened in my country, I don't want to go back. I don't have my family here. I'm here now, and my dream is to move forward, to work, to study, to learn, so that in the future, when I'm a mother again, I could teach them everything that I fought so hard for and everything that I have struggled to study and learn along the way.
Thank you. Ms. Presley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Suarez, I just wanted to state for the record that you did nothing wrong, and you certainly did nothing to deserve this. Seeking asylum is a human right, and you did what any mother or parent would have done for their child. You sacrificed everything for your safety and the safety of your baby. You left everything you knew for the chance of a better life. You said that you have a noble but weak heart. You underestimate your strength. And in this moment, you are embodying every American ideal that we espoused, that we do. And I thank you for that. It is unfortunate that our country is no longer standing by its promise of being a beacon of hope and haven for those like you seeking asylum. Instead, this administration has criminalized families and is now operating a fundamentally flawed system that is systemically separating families and engaging in human rights abuses on U.S. soil. So all I want to say to you, from the bottom of my heart, as a mom, as an American, and as a human being, is that I am sorry. I'm so very sorry that we have failed you. And I also want to say that I will never forget what you shared with us today, even if I'm tempted to or want to, because it is painful and traumatic and shameful, but I refuse to forget. We will not forget you or Maria. We will not look away. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Presley. Ms. Ocasio-Cortez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Y gracias, señora Juárez, por venir aquí hoy con el valor de compartir su historia. Quiero empezar con una pregunta que es muy importante. Primeramente, la ley de los Estados Unidos requiere que los niños se mantengan en condiciones seguras y sanitarias. Usted y su hija bebé estaban aquí en estas condiciones. En la opinión de usted, ¿estas condiciones estaban seguras y sanitarias? ¿Sí o no?
No.
No estaban seguras ni sanitarias.
No.
Pero también quiero preguntarle una cosa más. ¿Ha visto con sus propios ojos una cultura de crueldad adentro de estas facilidades?
Cuando yo estuve en detención en las jaulas, nos dieron una entrevista telefónicamente con los oficiales de Inmigración ICE, en la cual a mí me hablaron sobre qué era lo que yo venía a hacer en el país, a qué y por qué.
Un momentito también. Y recuerda...
Just for, let's translate, unless todo el mundo habla español aquí, but I think probably not. So if you could translate the last exchange.
To the first question about whether there's safe and sanitary conditions as mandated under U.S. law, in her opinion, the answer was no. To the second question about whether or not there was a culture of cruelty that she saw under ICE conditions, I guess I can get into the answer of that so far, which was that when I was in detention, when I was in the cage and we had a phone interview with immigrations and ICE officials, they asked me why I was here.
Después de la entrevista, el oficial de inmigración de ICE me preguntó del por qué, para qué había venido a Estados Unidos. Yo le respondí que yo venía a sacar adelante a mi hija, pero ellos casi no nos dejaban hablar. Y él me dijo con estas palabras: tú sabes que este es un país de americanos, que mi presidente es Donald Trump y que te podemos quitar a tu hija y a ti te podemos encerrar en la cárcel. Y yo recuerdo que yo me puse a llorar porque me quedé sin palabras como para poder responderles. Eso para mí es maltrato.
Sí, y una pregunta más. I'll let her translate quickly, pero una pregunta más. ¿Recuerda si en algún momento usted o cualquier otra mujer en el centro fueron llamadas por nombres groseros por los oficiales de la patrulla fronteriza?
Nombres groseros, no, pero sí palabras que a nosotros nos afectaban.
¿Y cuál palabras?
Como ustedes son inmigrantes, cosas así inofensivas. A mí no tanto, pero solo la llamada me dijeron esas fuertes palabras en la cual me dejaron sin responderles y con el derecho y la oportunidad de responderles del por qué yo venía a este país.
¿Y sentía segura en esos centros?
No.
Gracias.
As to the question, as to being on the telephone during the interview of why I was here and what I had come for, and I responded that I had come here, I was talking about my child's future, but they wouldn't let me talk, and they said, this country is for Americans, Trump is my president, and we can take your little girl away from you and lock you in jail. And I just started to cry because I really didn't have any words to respond to that in that situation. To me, that is mistreatment. To the question of were you called crude names, personally, no, but it was the nastiness of the words that were the strong words that were used. For me, like what? Like just calling me an immigrant, but not really letting me respond when they use strong words towards me and to really be able to give them any kind of appropriate response. To the question of, did you feel safe? No.
And Mr. Chair, I just think it's extremely important that this is noted, that this is not an issue. You know, there are debates about money and resources. That's for another day. But what is being pointed to here is a culture of cruelty. To have a CBP officer tell a migrant woman escaping unspeakable horrors in her home country and tell them this country is for Americans, and to threaten separating her from her daughter, to threaten a human rights violation, is extraordinarily concerning and at a bare minimum grounds for serious investigation by this committee and other entities. Thank you.
And that's what we're doing. So thank you very much, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez. Were there any other members who had any other questions that they wanted to ask? Ms. Kelly, did you have anything or no?
Not really a question. The questions have been asked, but just to give my sympathy and sorry and hope in your quest that this will never happen again to anybody else. But thank you for sharing.
Ms. Juarez, your story's broken the heart of America, but your courage gives us a second chance to get it right. So we want to thank you what you've done, and you have friends and admirers on this committee for coming forward. We are going to recess for the purpose of voting. We will resume with the second panel immediately after votes.